You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Folks, last night was the conclusion of the ESPN 10-part documentary, The Last Dance, chronicling the Chicago Bulls' 98 season, winning their 6th title. Obviously, millions were captivated by the documentary. Looking at the ratings, joining us right now is Mark Jones, ESPN NBA announcer. David Aldridge, longtime sports journalist. Of course, he covered the rise of Michael Jordan for so many years as well. In a moment, we'll be joined by Kerry Champion, of course, formerly of ESPN. I want to start with you, David. You're in the documentary. Mark is in it. He looks the same today as he did in the 1990s. He hasn't changed a bit. That must be what happens when you live in Miami. But David, what you contributed a lot, but what did you learn watching this that you didn't know?
Roland, first foremost, let me just offer my condolences to Roger B. Brown's family. I was on Roger's show so many times. I'm so sad to hear that. Roger was a good dude. We covered the league together when he covered the Mavericks.
Yep.
And I covered the Bullets back when they were the Bullets back then. So Roger, just a good dude. And I'm so sad to hear that. So sincere condolences to his family. In terms of what did I learn? I mean, honestly, I don't know that I learned very much, Roland. I knew. I mean, when you're around the NBA, you hear all these
something
stories.
that in 10 parts that you went, oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I forgot some stuff. That's just being old. That's just getting old. I forgot some things. Yeah. I forgot about how crazy Rodman was. And
right.
Just, skipping off to go to Vegas for a couple of days and then just skipping a practice during the NBA finals.
Right, that was crazy.
To do a wrestling event, So I had forgotten those things. So it was just more evidence of how crazy that last season was for Michael Jordan and the Bulls and Phil Jackson and everybody, for sure.
Mark, first of all, was awesome was that they granted these cameras that much access. I mean, the reality is, it's hard to tell these stories without having that level of access. You're not recounting their memories, but to be able to have, the video of, all right, Rodman, is he coming to practice after the whole Vegas deal and all of that? I mean, it was just crazy watching it because I'm sitting there going, because again, let's be real clear. I'm born and raised in Houston. I didn't give a damn about the Bulls. Okay, so Roland wasn't following Chicago and Michael Jordan like everybody else. So it was just crazy to go, that really happened?
You touched on it, Ro. It's like you said the word access. And I remember back in the early 90s, and David will probably echo this too. I remember going to the old Chicago Stadium during those finals. And Michael's locker would be one of the first ones as you went into the Bulls locker room. And you could sit there and you could chat with him and you could chop it up a little bit and find out what was on his mind for that day and before the game. And, it's when I look back now at the way we do things now a little bit in the league, it's a little bit different. But that access to that magnitude of a star in the game was really something that is phenomenal. When I look back on it now, I'm like, geez, I can't believe that we were able to just walk up on him like that. And he liked to be able to interact that way. And now it's a little bit different. Some of the players nowadays, they'll hang out in the trainer's room for the first 42 minutes of media access and come out for the last 2, and boom, that's it. But in terms of what I learned, that was one thing. And another thing probably was just what a great connector Phil Jackson was. You talked about Rodman taking off for a wrestling show in the middle of the finals and welcoming him back into the fold, and to be able to handle the different egos and personalities and do it. And Phil was so unique in the way that he did it with his, I remember Bulls players telling me about the meditation sessions they would have when Phil would turn the lights off and he would walk into the locker room with incense before practice and create the right vibe with his incense. I mean, this dude was just different, and it brought it all back. It was great to see and hear again.
David, I think one of the things that I look at documentaries a little bit differently than I think a lot of other people. First of all, I'm looking at how it was crafted, how it was edited. I'm looking at camera shots, things along those lines as well. But also for me, I wasn't just also looking at this from a perspective of just, oh my God, Michael Jordan, the greatest, and this basketball talent. It was really taking what you were hearing and say, how can you apply this to other businesses and other industries? And when you hear the author of the book who talked about that Michael operated in the moment. That was a meditation type thinking in terms of how he operated. When Mark talked about Phil Jackson, how he sort of took these spiritual elements to sort of lead this whole team together. To see that over these 10 parts was just stunning, and how it worked.
Well, to Mark's point, I mean, Phil was a great catalyst for that whole kind of Zen Buddhism kind of approach to living in the moment, not thinking about tomorrow, not thinking about yesterday, but concentrating on today and what you could do to be good today. And so to me, like Roland, Michael's demands on people, to me, are no different than the demands all of our best teachers ever made on us. I remember my 8th grade English teacher because he said, this isn't good enough, David. I remember my 10th grade history teacher because he said, this isn't good enough, David. You know, and so that's what we all remember, the people that challenged us, that told us we could be better than we thought we could be. And Michael was no different from that. He was no different from a great conductor who is demanding of the 4th cello. He was no different than Duke Ellington demanding greatness from his orchestra or anybody. So that, to me, is not something that anyone should fear. You should embrace that, because if the best person at what they do for a living sees something or sees enough in you to tell you, you can be better than you are, why would you run away from that? I don't understand why you would run away from that. I would think of that as an incredible vote of confidence that they care enough about me. Jimmy Johnson, the great coach of the Cowboys, used to say, worry about me when I don't talk about you, when I don't yell at you, because that means I don't care about you anymore. And that's what the great ones do when they see potential in you.
You know, Mark, it was very interesting watching it, because I tweeted a couple of those things out, and as I listened to what folks said about Jordan, and so I think back to places that I've run, and folks are like, "Oh, you're too hard. You know, why are you pushing folks so far?" And as I listen to Jordan, I think with people, and I think the problem is that people go, "Oh, that's cool in sports, but anywhere else." But the reality is, when you are that type of person, you see things totally different than anybody else. And you're trying to. He wanted to win titles, but also I think he was trying to push himself to say, what level can I personally get to that you may not even understand? And some people are perfectly cool saying, I'm gonna be right here. He's like, no. You can actually go here. And if I don't push you there, then we're not gonna get there. And if I don't push you, and then you don't deliver, well, then you can't help me get to the goal that I'm trying to get to. And I think for people to say, Mark, oh, bullying, you were mean and you were just too hard, I guarantee you there's not a single Chicago Bull who don't mind saying, y'all see this ring?
Yeah. I don't remember any of his teammates at the time complaining about how much they were pushed by Michael. And I think, Roland and David, one thing maybe in the documentary that, in essence, that they might have overlooked or maybe not totally captured in that was, there were guys that occasionally did push back at Michael. And I can remember it wasn't just about stuff on the court. I remember Ron Harper telling me a story about Michael shortly after coming back from his stint with baseball in Birmingham. And they were on the bus one day, and they would do the dozens with Michael as hard as he would come at them. And Ron Harper one day stood up on the bus and yelled out to the guys of the bus, "Hey, Michael, what's this?" And he flashed 2-1, 2-1. And Michael said, "I don't know, Ron, what is that?" He said, "Curveball inside, baby. You can't hit that. I know that." they would go back at Michael, I think, more than things were maybe told in that documentary. And I think Michael was the catalyst. He pushed, they pushed back, and together it pushed that Bulls crew in those 3 years forward towards those championships. And I don't think that, like you said, there's many guys that were opposed to that because there was good chemistry on that team.
It is still stunning to me, David, to think about people. I think about Jerry Krause. I think about who are so hell-bent on credit. I mean, seriously, I think, at the end, look, the way I roll is, man, look, you win, we win. I win, we win. But this whole, and I wouldn't be surprised because you heard it a lot. He was short. Jordan ripped him all the time for being a short dude among giants. And we know about Napoleon complexes. But just thinking of that quote, if you go 82-0, Phil still ain't coming back. You like, damn, bro.
Yeah. Well, I would say a couple of things. I think what you're saying, there's obviously some truth to it. Jerry wanted some credit for putting the team together around Jordan. He didn't draft Jordan. Rod Thorne drafted Jordan. But Jerry Krause did bring in Phil Jackson. He did bring in Scottie Pippen. He did bring in Horace Grant. He did bring in Steve Kerr. He did, all of the key players on those championship teams. Did he seek too much credit for that? Yeah, probably. It's a sport of egos, right? And Michael had as big an ego as anybody, certainly. And so you could certainly say that. What I've always said about Jerry Krause is this, Roland. Jerry Krause is an employee. He did not own the Chicago Bulls.
Precisely.
He was an employee. You know what I mean? He worked for Jerry Reinsdorf, who was the owner.
Right.
And if Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, wanted that team to stay together, that team would have stayed together. It didn't stay together. And that's because I think the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, did not want to keep paying the salaries that he was paying at the time to the top players, didn't want to pay Phil Jackson what the top coaches were getting at the time, and was ready to move on at a lower payroll than he had previously had to pay. I've never, in 30 years of covering the NBA, I've never met an owner that said, I can't do what I want to do because my general manager disagrees with me.
Right.
Ever.
Right. Yeah. Especially a guy who owned 2 professional sports franchises.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So you know the case. And then of course, in 22 years, the Bulls have been to 1 Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
So all that, you got 6 titles, you got all of that, but baby, you ain't tasted nothing in 22 years.
Right.
Yeah, I think forget all the money you had. Look, you're a billionaire with everybody else. Bottom line is, Mark, you like being on top. And I think for all his dancing and trying to explain now, Jerry Reinsdorf is probably like, damn, what the hell was I thinking by just letting Jerry do what he want? My ass should have stepped in and say, shut it down. Y'all win the title. Y'all all coming back. Because, see, it ain't no guarantee you're going to come back.
Yeah, they haven't been relevant since, Derrick Rose had his MVP season, really. And I think I know Jerry's not here to answer for himself, but I go to the guy above him like we've been talking about, Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner. I would call it system failure because, if you're going to be successful sometimes in business or sports, you buy the house and you worry about the mortgage later. And they could have first, enterprising and as creative as they were in getting those players to put around Michael Jordan and win those championships, the 6 titles, I think it was as deleterious and an egregious oversight that they didn't plan enough far ahead monetarily, financially, to fit things correctly so that they could sustain what they had. To think that you win 3 titles and you don't get a shot for the 4th by blowing it up without blowing it up by not having a plan is really something incredible. And it kind of takes a little bit of the shine off the management job that they did to put it all together and have that incredible run of 6 titles in 8 years. And, I think that Scottie, he might not have come back because he was due to be paid. Maybe there's a way that they could have done that if they would have been creative, but to not even get on the court and run it until the wheels fall off is crazy.
It's like in boxing, okay? You want the title of champion, you earn it in the ring. You don't earn it by the sanctioned body just giving it to you. And so I think that's the deal. You wanted to see them win it or lose it on the floor. There were a lot of people who talked about, and Jason Johnson has a piece in the Griot talking about Michael Jordan and activism and things along those lines. And the documentary talked about the whole shoe comment. Republicans buy shoes. He said it was a joke. People wanting Michael Jordan to do all these different things, even as it is today. But what I found to be interesting is that Craig Hodges' voice could have been very interesting in this documentary, and it wasn't. That to have that level of attention, David, focused on Jordan activism, and you not talk to basically the Colin Kaepernick of that team.
Yeah.
I think was a missing ingredient.
They should have had Craig in, and and if you've talked to Craig, and I've talked to Craig, and a lot of people have over the years. He talked to the Garden in 2017, same thing. And what Craig has basically said over the years is, Michael didn't want to talk because he wasn't educated enough about the issues, okay, to be able to talk, and he felt like he didn't want to talk about things he didn't know about. I tend to agree with that interpretation. Look, when I was younger, Roland, when I was in my late 20s and early 30s and covering the league for the Post and for ESPN, look, I wanted Michael to endorse Harvey Gantt. I used to always say, what could they do to Michael Jordan? He's the greatest player of all time. What could they do to him? But, as you get older, you realize you can't live your life. You certainly can't live somebody else's life.
Right.
So you should just concentrate on living your life. And you can't make other people do what you want them to do. And so Michael did what he did. I wish he had done more publicly. He did a lot of things privately. He chose to do them privately. And you have to accept the fact that some people are just wired that way, that they're not going to do the things that you want them to do publicly. But what I have come to believe, Roland, is that because of Michael Jordan, because he was the first African American to sell across the board in terms of endorsements and have that kind of entree into corporate America, someone like a LeBron James can not only make money, but also take the political stands that people want him to take.
Right.
But that doesn't happen without Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? So you have to give Michael Jordan credit in his time for doing what he thought was best for his career and his life. And you can take shots at him for not doing enough. And that's fair. He's a big boy. It's the public eye. But understand that if Michael Jordan hadn't been there, there'd be no Kobe. There'd be no LeBron James in terms of not just the endorsements, but the ability to do social activism as well.
Also, Mark, look, I don't recall Magic Johnson saying a hell of a whole lot during his career on social justice issues. Yeah. I don't. Now, maybe y'all can correct me, but Jordan
he was a capitalist too. He got the Magic Johnson theaters too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true. The Rodney King, I don't remember a whole lot. I could be wrong in that, but when that happened out in Los Angeles, I don't remember.
Right.
Magic,
and that was in Los Angeles.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I don't remember him saying a whole bunch about that. And, looking at Michael's civic activism, it looked a little bit different as a young guy back then. I was a little disappointed, but I understood. And that's what kind of, for me, frames LeBron James in a very formidable way right now, to be able to be in a position where he can speak to things that are very important. I live in a city where, there's a lot going on, and Trayvon Martin was murdered up in Orlando, just up the turnpike several years ago. And LeBron was very vocal. He came out right away. He wasn't the type to take somebody's temperature and see which way the wind was blowing on certain civil rights issues.
There was some time, though. There was some time. Because he was killed on NBA All-Star Weekend in Sanford, Florida. I was actually in Orlando. That story began to bubble up. And I remember, and again, let's be real clear, folks out there start tripping. I'm not taking credit for anything, but I remember I was one of the folks who were driving on social media, and I was tweeting Dwayne Wade and LeBron directly. And like, yo, because I knew Dwayne, so I was texting him as well. And then I remember after they took the hoodie, I remember Dwayne sending me a tweet saying, Roland, thanks for keeping us abreast and pressing us on these issues. And what happened was, as it began, because I was going, yo, Miami Heat, the kids from Miami, Orlando Magic, what the hell happened near y'all? Neither one of y'all saying jack? What the hell's going on? And then, of course, when they took that photo with the hoodies, just that photo said a hell of a whole lot at that moment. And then you begin to see this thing build and build and build. But to David's point about knowledge, I've experienced this with many professional athletes, many and also entertainers who call me personally and say, hey, Ro, I don't know nothing about this here.
Right.
I trust you. Give me the 411. Because that's the hard part when you get somebody who know what the hell they're talking about, who start talking and they make it worse.
I think that's part of it is being able to speak comfortably on things with the requisite knowledge. And I think what we see with LeBron now is that he actually is willing. He's evolved to the point where he's willing to do the work, the research, to be able to make a statement. And it's important enough for him to do that.
I think with this documentary, and y'all know it because, again, you see how the sausage is made. And I just think for the general public, having no real understanding of how we perceive, we look at a Steve Jobs, we look at someone like that, and I think people, oh man, just these dumb athletes, without realizing, no, the brilliance and the high level. The greatest part was listening to Dennis Rodman describe the basketball spinning and how he was breaking down where the ball was going to go. I'm going to go here, then here, and here, and here. And again, people think, oh man, they're dumb and crazy. No. That takes a high level of intellect to be at that level to study your craft.
Yeah, these are guys that, watch dozens of hours of film, hundreds of hours of film over the course of their careers, to be able to speak with authority about, if the ball bounces here, I'm going to do this, or the ball bounces here, I'm going to do that. And Jordan knowing exactly what Brian Russell, the Utah Jazz defender, how he liked to defend up on his toes. So if I give him a header fake, he can't recover. And so all of those things, that's the 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, right? And becoming an expert in your field. And all of those guys are experts in their field, whether it's Michael or Magic or Isiah Thomas, all of them were experts in their field. Kobe was an expert about basketball. Like, you couldn't tell Kobe something that he didn't see before. These guys have seen every defense. They've seen every coverage. They know exactly what teams are going to try to do. They know 3 moves ahead what they're going to do. And that's what the truly great players do, is because they have so much knowledge about the game and intelligence about the game that they can anticipate what's going to happen and and act accordingly, and then create an opportunity, and that's all it is an opportunity to make the right play to win a basketball game.
Mark, nobody got talked about more, I think, outside of the Bulls than Isiah Thomas and this documentary. And I really think there should be a significant reevaluation over how the basketball world views Isiah Thomas. I think when you hear discussions about the greatest players, I can tell you, it's rare his name comes up. And I think and this documentary really revealed so much. And the reason I think that Dream Team snub really personally hurts him to this day is because that would have solidified him as one of the greatest ever.
Yeah, I think that's a great valid point, Roland. And, in a strange, almost perverse way, when you look at the way that Michael Jordan was portrayed as maybe not a nice guy, a bit of a bully at times, in the context of the documentary, Isiah should be and feel vindicated in a way, because he was a type 8 competitor as well. And, pound for pound, 6 feet and under, I don't know that there was a greater player in the game. I mean, I happen to think that Isiah in a way, kind of revolutionized the point guard position in what he was able to do. But I think that that did hurt him, not being on the dream team. It's a shame because when you look at Chuck Daly being the coach of that team, boy, there had to be some kind of consternation on Chuck's part. And I knew Chuck, and, he's not here to answer these questions, but Chuck loved Isiah. I think that he would have wanted Isiah on that team, obviously.
And I think, David, when you start looking at, again, how this documentary, what it showed, I think what it also showed is this here, when in terms of how national media also frames this as well. I think that the glamour teams of the NBA historically, Boston Celtics, Los Angeles Lakers, even though the Knicks ain't won jack since the original Shaft came out, the New York Knicks, and I think, yes, the Houston Rockets fan will take a shot at the Knicks since we beat them in the finals. I think Chicago has been elevated into that glamour team, and I think also Isiah was hurt because it was Detroit. The phrase "bad boys." It was like, y'all were like this rough and tumble thug team as opposed to this great team. And so media framing also dictates how people are perceived in the moment, but also 10, 20 years later. And that also plays a role in it. Even though Isiah had the great smile and the personality, it was still, but you on that thug team.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of things with Isiah. You could do a 10-part series on Isiah, really. I mean, there was a lot of things. Number one, to your point, the media framing is completely accurate, Roland. You're completely right. I was I've done a lot of shows today, and somebody asked me about Kareem, and I said, and the question was, well, Kareem doesn't seem to get the recognition as a great player. And I said, because think about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was formerly known as Lou Alcindor, changing his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the early 70s, becoming a Muslim, and trying to explain that to a bunch of old white guys who were sports writers at the time.
Right.
And having no champion who could understand where he was coming from. And there's a reason, because nobody advocated for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the media, at that time. And that carried over. Whereas Magic, Bird, Isiah, Michael, they all had champions. They all had people who said, look, you need to think about this guy in this context and why he's great. To Isaiah's point, 46-39 career record against Michael Jordan, period. End of sentence. He's got a winning record against Michael Jordan. His team ended the Boston dynasty, ended it. His team beat the Lakers in the finals, basically ended that dynasty. And they didn't, ultimately Michael overcame the Pistons and won, but the lessons that they had to learn from the Pistons are what created that dynasty in Chicago as well. And to your point about the Olympic team, it's not just 92. Isiah Thomas was on the Olympic team in 1980. That team didn't get to go to the Olympics because of the boycott against the Soviet Union. So he was twice snubbed. So when
you don't get the chance to represent your nation, to put the flag on you, to win the gold medal, I mean, you're just it's just a different view of how you're being framed, and it's like that's that for him. Trophy case, NCAA championship, world championship, state championship, doesn't have a gold medal.
Doesn't have a gold medal. And again, in comparison to Kareem, who was Lou Alcindor in 1968, he followed Harry Edwards' lead. He boycotted the 68 Olympics in Mexico City. He didn't get to be on the Olympic team. And then in 72, for some insane reason, he wasn't on the team. I can't even describe to you why that didn't happen.
Which is just absolutely stunning. I want to pick up just a couple of questions here. We talk about media framing. And we're talking about LeBron and these social issues. Here's also why today is also different. Because of guys like y'all. What people don't understand is, you said it, all these old white guys. The reality is, you got all these black players, high school, college, basketball, football, pros. Yeah, when you go in that press box, it's lily white. I talked about my boy Roger B. Brown down. We would go to the Mavericks games, and trust me, it'll be Roger B., me, and a couple other cats, and there's all these white folks at all these stations. And so for a LeBron James today, he has the luxury of there being more black columnists, more African-American announcers, Mark, more African-American reporters. And so he's not having to explain to a whole bunch of white guys, why can't he just shut up and dribble the basketball? Because he's now got brothers who, in meetings, can have his back in news meetings when they're discussing what to cover. Mark, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's so true. That's keeping it a buck. That's 100 because, I think about some of the production meetings that I'm in where I work, and we'll get off course a little bit, and I'll have to bring it back because there's so much nuance in sport, right? I think about, I was covering a game, and one of the sideline reporters was asking, geez, he was doing this after he dunked the ball. I said, well, if you've been to the playground, that means he put it on his head. He dunked it. And without different perspectives, without people from different backgrounds that look like me and look like David and yourself, we're missing out on that. I think about the national championship game in college football when Clemson is getting the championship trophy and the Clemson players are up there saying, hey, if you want a coach that isn't all up in your video, your recruiting video, then come to Clemson. And it was a funny moment that was lost on, unfortunately.
The white folks had no clue. They didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Fortunately in the NBA, I think we do a little bit better job than some other sports. But I know that because, like you mentioned, LeBron, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, because they deal with people who they can sit down with in the interview rooms prior to games and feel comfortable with, and kind of peel that onion back a little bit and be a little bit more revealing. I think that helps the overall product. And they know that they're going to be understood, that none of their mannerisms, none of their nuances are going to be misinterpreted to the negative side of the equation. Then I think we all benefit. David?
Yeah, no question about that. It's been since one of my first beat jobs, Roland, was covering Georgetown when I was at the Washington Post. And I remember doing a story on a player, and I completely quoted everything that he said accurately. It was not the King's English. I got a phone call at 1 a.m. from John Thompson. And John said, David, would you mind helping this kid out with his language? Just fix it for him. And I understood completely what he was saying. You know what I mean? And I wasn't offended by it. I wasn't like Joe Reporter. I'm going to do the job. I'm going to quote him correctly. And I knew exactly what he meant. It's like, Coach, don't worry about it. I got you. Don't worry about it. And to Mark's point and to your point, that only happens when people trust you and understand that you're going to do your job, and you're going to cover the team, and you're going to be fair, and you're going to take, if they do something bad, you got to report on it. But on the other hand, you're not looking to get them. You're not out to get them. You know what I mean? And so there's a subtlety, as Mark pointed, there's a nuance to it that I think when there's people of color in the press box, that helps, I think, in these regards.
2 questions left. Gentlemen, I'll start with David and go to Mark. Michael Jordan doesn't want to give anybody, he's still compared to today. Mm-hmm. Gary Payton limited his ass. If you look at the stats, I'm just saying, you can. I mean, he tried to laugh. No, I had no problem with Gary Payton. Now then, Mike's like, well, I had a lot on my mind. Now hold up, Mike. You have a lot of your mind the first 3 games or the next? See, that's my only. See, I get it. You don't want to give anybody an edge, but Gary Payton.
Gary's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer, period, end of sentence. He's one of the great individual defenders of all time. Did he defend Michael Jordan better than most people defended Michael Jordan? Sure. Yes.
And was Jordan Call an idiot not putting him on Michael in game 1? Yes.
But to Jordan's point, did he stop Michael Jordan?
No, he didn't. But you can't. Here's the deal, Mark. You can't stop Michael Jordan. But when you look at those stats, field goal percentage was down. 3-point percentage was way down. But it was like Mike. I know you don't want to, but the numbers don't lie. Gary did a damn good job, Mike. Stop fronting.
He did a pretty good job. He did a pretty good job. The problem was he let Michael know about it at the end of Game 5 because I remember Ron Harper running into Gary Payton a little bit later that night at a dinner spot, and Ron went right up to Gary and said, "Hey, you shouldn't have been popping your mouth like that because Mike's back at the hotel with a bunch of his buddies from North Carolina hanging out, and he's getting ready for Game 6."
Well, if I'm Gary Payton, I'm gonna do the same thing. If you can't get that many shots in, I'm a crow about getting some shots in. So I'm with Gary. Last question. Obviously, we saw the 10-parter here. Mark, I'll start with you. Who would you like? It doesn't have to be a 10-parter, but who do you think, either an individual or a team, that would make for an unbelievably amazing, similar documentary?
Wow. I would, man, we brought his name up a little while ago. I'd love to see something on Isiah Thomas. Isiah came up in an environment where he had to earn everything. I think his trip through playing, he's a Hall of Famer, obviously, through management, ownership in the NBA. I think he's got one of the most compelling stories out there, and a guy that, he overcame everything coming from Chicago. His story, his mom, Mary, raising him, and his brothers. I think Isiah Thomas, I'd love to see a great documentary at the depth done that we did a Michael Jordan documentary, with the kind of access. I don't know if it might be a little bit too late to do that kind of retrospective, but I'd love to see it done on him.
David?
Iverson. Iverson to me is, I think Allen is one of the most important figures in the last 20, 25 years of sports, not just the NBA. Allen introduced a completely different dynamic to team sports. He not just in terms of his play, but in terms of the cultural significance, the way he looked, the ink, all of those things. If you ask guys today who maybe didn't see Jordan in his prime, who was your idol growing up? So many of them will say Iverson.
Right.
It was Iverson. And I don't think, because they didn't win a championship, he doesn't get that kind of recognition. But he was an amazingly important figure in the history of this league.
NBA.
And I think,
and
after Jordan, who I think is the most important in the last 30 years, I believe in terms of just everything, not just on the court, but everything, I think Allen Iverson is the next guy.
Yeah, and also cultural influence. When you talk about, it's funny.
Exactly.
So I'll end with this here because I'll link in what we talked about with all of these white sports journalists, and then again my man Roger B. Brown passing. So we were at the Dallas Mavericks Media Day, and we're sitting at the table, and there's a white sports writer who's still covering the NBA, who starts going on about how much Allen Iverson was a thug. And I go, I'm sorry, when's the last thug you roll up against? I said, why is he a thug? So he starts talking about his hair. And I said, oh, so he has cornrows, he's a thug. I said, what the hell is Cherokee Parks with a mohawk? I said, what the hell is that? So we start going at it. I said, no. You're not going to sit your ass at this table and call Allen Iverson a thug. I said, because see, here's what y'all white boys do. I said, a white boy in Philadelphia says something about Allen Iverson. Then a white boy in Detroit picks it up. Then a white sportscaster in L.A. picks it up. I said, and so all of a sudden, y'all have created this entire narrative that he's a thug. I said, all this. I said, you ain't even run into a thug. You know nothing about him because you're saying that because of tattoos and his hair. I said, but I will show you the white boys in the league who have tattoos, who have crazy hairstyles, but they're not thugs. I said, so you're not going to sit at this table and go, dude, when I say he froze, first of all, Roger B is cracking up laughing. He's like, bro, you killed him. I said, but that was what I'm talking about, to Mark's point, what happens when we're at the table. You're not going to establish the narrative, and then y'all run with it, and then 30 years from now, somebody's like, oh, yeah, Iverson, he's a thug. Like, no. And that's where our voices are critically important. So I thought it was fantastic. Great job. They'll certainly clean up, I think, when it comes to award shows. And we certainly appreciate the perspective there. And I'm sure Michael probably will cuss David out for thinking the Pacers were actually going to win that Game 7 and actually
he already
it.
knows. He already knows.
Yeah, but
okay.
he knows, but he probably in the back of his mind is like, yeah, I'm gonna hold it against you, because clearly Michael still has grudges. Ask
He
Charles.
never forgets.
well,
He never forgets.
yeah.
Yes, and ask Charles Barkley about those damn grudges. All right,
Yeah.
David Aldridge, Mark Jones, I appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you so very much.
Bro, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
All
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
This is the Ceek VR headset created by Mary Spiel, the sister. We had her on the show. Black woman. She actually is the inventor of this particular headset. And so what happens is you just simply place your phone right into here, and then of course close it up, and then go to their website and then their app, and you can actually experience the comedy showcase. And so they have these headsets, these VR headsets, on their site Ceek.com for sale. Then also they have these 4D 360-degree headphones. First of all, I love the two stuff because they're in black and gold, my frat colors. But these are awesome because for gamers, it comes with detachable headset, and again, folks, it gives you 360-degree sound. Amazing sound. If you want to buy these, you have a promo code you can use. This is just for our followers, and it is RMVIP2020. RMVIP2020. Put that promo code in. If you want to buy the headphones, buy the VR headset, you get that discount to buy it. They're amazing. So Ceek.com, RMVIP2020.
Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.